What's up everybody, Sam Smyers here. Today I want to show you how to make a selected stop deep house song, and to do that I'm going to be going through how I made my song Wait. Now before we get started today, if you are watching this channel right now, then you probably have seen some of my other videos, so please go ahead and give this video a like to help with that YouTube algorithm, and also please subscribe to my channel if you are not yet subscribed. All right, let's go ahead and jump right in. So this is my song Wait. It came out a few weeks ago. Let me go ahead and just play you part of the track. I'll play you the verse into part of the drop, so you can get a general idea of it. But if you want to hear the whole thing, just go onto Spotify and search Wait, Sam Smyers.
I can never hide. I let it all out. The feelings that make me fly are calling aloud. Oh, just wait.
So yeah, pretty cool vibe on this one. Let's go ahead and just start going through the vocals, and then I'll go into the instrumental. Let's go ahead and look at some of the markers of the track. So basically, I marked out the whole track. We've got the verse, build up, drop A, drop B. I divided up the drop into two sections. Verse 2, build up again, and then drop A, drop B, and the ending. And at the end, I have also my key, C minor. And we've got 124, which is your deep house tempo. 124, 125-ish is usually where deep house sits around. So all my vocals are bussed in this Vox group. And so on this Vox group, I have the solid bus compressor in the Kickstart 2. So the Kickstart 2 I just have for part of the drop. I have it automated on. And then I have the solid bus compressor, which is unlinked. So I clicked on this little button that says link LNR. So I unlinked it because I watched a video where Chris Lord Algae says that he basically unlinks all of his compressors. And so I'm just testing that out now on a lot of my mixes, just making sure that if there is the option to unlink the left and right channels, then I will unlink them if I have a stereo compressor. And the reason is because I think Chris Lord Algae was saying that it gives it more of a stereo feel if you unlink them. Let me play you the dry vocal.
I can never hide. I let it all out.
And let me go ahead and put on the effects.
I can never hide. I let it all out.
So those are all of the effects on that lead vocal channel. And then I have another group of Vox effects. Vox of VFX is what I called it. So this just has some random reverbs. I have a quarter delay, and basically I'll just copy and paste a section or a phrase or a syllable from that lead vocal and put it onto a new track, and then put 100% of a delay or a reverb. That's just like a delay. So that's what a lot of these vocals are, is just little effects like that throughout the track, instead of just trying to automate and put them on this one lead vocal. Instead of putting on a delay and automating it on and off, I just like to put some of those delays on separate tracks. So let's go through the processing on this lead vocal. We've got the EQ8. I have my 1176 style compressor and my LA2A style compressors. I have a Pro Q3. I have the Soothe 2, the CLA vocals where I'm just using the sub, the top, and the compress, another Pro Q, a Pro DS, Fresh Air, which is a free plugin, and if you have trouble getting your vocals to have that airy sound that you feel like is missing from like your record, if it's a pop record, then definitely check this out. It's a free plugin. And then I've been using this Aphex Vintage Oral Exciter on some vocals because another vocalist that I work with, he said that he always puts it on his vocal chain. So I've been trying it out, and it's easy to overuse, so be careful when you use that. But it just makes it a bit more exciting and brighter. And then after that, I put on another DS. And so that's something that I saw Ian Kirkpatrick, who's the producer for like Dua Lipa and Charlie XCX, he'll usually like do a DS and then also do some excitement after that at de-esser. So I'm doing the Fresh Air and the Exciter, Aphex Vintage Exciter, and then he'll do another de-esser after that. So then I have my plate, reverb, clean, delay, and then hall. So this is just a plate. I'll solo this reverb so you can hear it. And this delay. And then this hall. So those are all the effects on that lead vocal. And then occasionally I will take that lead vocal, duplicate it, and then if there is another section, so this is that verse vocal, and then I've got the build-up vocal, I will copy and paste those settings, and then I might make some minor adjustments for this section. So basically, if you have a lead vocal, but different phrases, different sections are sung a bit differently, you can just always copy and paste them and create 2, 3, however many tracks. And so that is just another technique instead of trying to have all of the same settings for that lead vocal throughout the entire track. Like if the vocalist sings something a bit differently, it's just helpful to just separate the vocals onto separate tracks. So then I have this reverb vocal, which is just 100% reverb, basically. So OTT and basically 100% reverb. This is during the drop. So he says a little while longer, and let's hear it with the effects. So that was a pretty easy effect to do, just OTT and vintage verb. Then I have my more effects, just random reverbs, delays, things like that. And then let's go into the doubles. So these are just going to be the high vocals for the build up. And then I have some low vocals, some low doubles. And on these, I have similar processing to the lead vocal. So if I go in here, just basically copy and pasted a lot of the processing from that lead vocal, and then add on some different reverb effects. So just a hall reverb and then a chorus effect. And I'm using this chorus dimension D from Arturia. And notice on the higher ones, I have them panned all the way to the left and then all the way to the right. And then on the low doubles, I have them slightly panned, so they're more centered. And so that's another technique you can do when you're doing multiple layers of doubles and harmonies, is you don't have to pan them all 100% to the right, 100% to the left. You can have some slightly panned in the middle, some all the way panned. You can vary that up. And then I also automate these higher doubles to be in the center for the second verse.
But I'm trapped inside this waterfall, and my head can't swim upstream.
And then I automate some of the gain there. And then also I automated on this decapitator because I wanted to have this vintage feel. Here, I'll play the whole track.
But I'm trapped inside this waterfall, and my head can't swim upstream. Yeah, when you're here, I can't think it all, and I don't.
So those are going to be all of the vocals. Now we can check out some of the effects. So a lot of times for the effects, I don't really want to go into the effects too much, but basically I just find little samples from Splice and put them in. So nothing crazy with the effects. So just white noise risers. And there's like an alarm sound there. So that's basically all I have for the effects throughout the track. And I don't think I have any processing on the group. So now let's go into some of the instruments. So I have a lot of atmospheres down at the bottom. Let's check out all these atmospheres in the verse in the beginning. So I have this whining sound. I have a high string sound that comes in during the build-up, and then another atmosphere on top of that. And then those are layered with this organ that's really cool during the build-up. That's like a very eerie sounding organ. And that sound is just going to be a serum pad. And let's check out some of the chords in the beginning, in the verse. And so you can see I'm doing some automation with a high cut on my filter here, just giving some movement so that starts a bit more filtered in the beginning of that verse, and then that filter releases as you get into the verse a bit more.
You can never hide. I let it all out. The feelings that make me fly are calling aloud. Oh, just wait.
Let's go through some of these other instruments during this build-up part. I have another atmosphere. There's this little wind down sound, and then I've got some Prophet V3. This is going to be an Arturia synth, so that's playing some chords. And then there is going to be like a Anjuna Beats style of lead sound. That's going to be a Serum synth. And then I just automated this washout filter so that we get that reverb intensifying as it gets closer to the drop. And then also on top of all of the instruments in the instrument group, I'm using this thing called Endless Smile, which is basically from Dada Life. And it has this build up feature where it essentially adds in like all the reverb, all the delay. And it's really cool because you can just add it onto your track instead of having to automate a bunch of parameters. You can just add this on and then it'll kind of add this riser effect. So I'm doing that for the build up. And let's go ahead and just check that out. I'll solo these instruments. And let's check it out without the Endless Smile. So yeah, I'm just using it very subtly as an effect there, but you can definitely hear it cutting off the low end and making it build up that tension before it gets to the drop. So on the instrument bus, while we're here, I've got the solid bus compressor again with this button turned off for the link L and R. And I like to use the Ozone 9 for excitement. And so I'm using the Vintage Tape plugin. So just Clear Character is the preset that I used. Pro Q3, cutting off the low end there. We've got the Endless Smile and then Kickstart 2, and just using it at about 26%, and of course, sidechaining it to the kick. Let's move into the instruments in the drop. That's a synth loop stab that I found from Splice. Here's a little thing which was like a vocal that I chopped up. And I put on Shaper Box, so let's listen to it without the Shaper Box. So there you can hear I'm automating that LFO. And I'm just using this volume shaper for that Shaper Box and automating the LFO to make it interesting and give it some movement. And then we've got the pluck lead. This automation here is actually going to be the pitch bend. So it's playing the same note over and over, but this little pitch bend makes that note sound a bit different and give it some movement. So that's a pretty cool technique for deep house leads. These plucks, these saw wave pluck style of leads, is you can just add some pitch bend movement to that lead to make it, give it some variation so it almost sounds like different notes when it's really the same note. So I'm doing the pitch bend automation. This is going to be just some reverb automation. And I've got some other automation. This is going to be the high cut filter automating. And I've got that washout effect as well. And that washout effect is a audio effects rack that I have that has a bunch of reverb and delay. So almost like that Endless Smile plugin, but just using Ableton stock plugins. Under that pluck, there's just a lower layer of the pluck. And here's just a sample synth string sound from Splice. I've got some of these chord stabs. You can hear a lot of random chord stabs, especially in Kream style tracks where they do these really cool percussive chord stabs. So I was taking a little inspiration from them. And let's go ahead and listen to that in context now. Let's check out the second verse. So using a lot of the same instruments I've already showed you, the new synth that I use in the second verse is going to be this verse lead. So I'm doing some automation there. You can feel it building up, and it starts out very subtle in the mix and gets a bit louder as we get into the build up. And so that's something you can do, is you can add in these little melodies. It's not too complicated of a melody, but it just complements that vocal really nicely without getting in the way of it. So almost like a way to add some ear candy is, if you're getting into the second verse, maybe think of a subtle melody you can add in to make it a bit more interesting and different from that first verse. Let's now get into the bass group. So I've got that solid compressor, bus compressor again, really like that plugin. I was trying out the R bass to use that on the bus, but I felt like it was giving the bass a bit too much, and so I ended up not using it. And then I'm using the Pro Q3 and using the sidechain option because I'm doing some dynamic EQing. So I'm basically sidechaining this band with the kick, just making some room in that little area around 38 hertz or so, moving that bass out of the way so that kick can get through a bit more. And then I'm using the utility plugin to put my bass into mono. So let's check out the bass. So the bass during the verses, I'm just using Reese bass for the buildup. And then a bit of a different style of Reese bass pad for the verses, and I'm layering it with a sub. And let's check out the bass in the drop. So I've got a growl style bass, a growl style bass, which Meduza uses a lot. Which sounds like that. And so that's going to be a growl from my preset pack, and I'm using some Saturn distortion on there to get some of that distortion. Let's check out the plucks now. So that's going to be the bass pluck. It's 3 layers. I have one layer that is going to be adding the high frequencies. I have a second layer that's going to be adding some of the low frequencies. And then I have a third layer which is going to be adding some of the width. So that's a technique you can do for bass. You can have a higher layer, a lower layer, and then another layer adding some width. So on this width one, I have the low end cut off around 58 hertz. So still have some low end in there, but not as much as this one where I'm adding in the low end, this middle one. During the last drop, I do bring in these brass stabs that are pretty big sounding. Which is pretty cool. So I'm doing some automation with the pitch there, and let's check that out in the track. So I did that in the second drop where it's almost like this fake out. So instead of going into it immediately in that measure, I add in another like 4 count there. So it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, where you add in that growl. So it's almost like throws you off a bit because that just makes it a bit different from the first drop. So that's something you can do for your second drop, is to maybe add in a little extra space before you hit with a drop, and that will give a bit more anticipation when you finally get into that drop. So that's it for the bass group. And let's just check out the last group. It's going to be the drums. So I've got the kick. Really heavy sounding kick. And then I just added another top layer for the drop. So that's going to be the kick. And then let's just check out the other instruments or the other drums during the verse. So I have this fast hat. I have all the top loops grouped together. And so it's just the kick and those hats there.
You can never hide. I let it all out.
And let's check out the drums in the build-up. So I've got that snare riser, just have a snare repeating and then automating the filter and some more hi-hats and then a clap. So I'll solo all those together. And on top of that, I also have like a clock sound. So I'll solo all these together so you can hear it. So that snare sound is a really popular sound. I think it's just from a Mark Knight kit. You can just find that snare sound and then create some good build-ups with that snare sound and a filter. And I'm just using, I think, a auto filter, to do that. And a lot of times when I get into the drop, I'll layer my claps again. So I'm using two types of claps. I have claps for this pre-build-up, and then I have some claps for the drop. So these are claps for the drop with these reverses. And let's check out the tops for the drop. So that's just a hi-hat loop. And some more shaker style loops. And then there's some random tom echoes. This one's kind of cool. Random, and then you've got your crash. And let's go ahead and just solo all those drums together. And so of course on there, I've got the solid bus compressor again on the bus, and I'm doing some parallel compression. So I created an audio effect rack where I have a solid bus compressor again, but slamming it really hard. And then mixing that in with the dry channel. And then using the K-clip for that soft compression, soft clipping. Sorry, not soft compression, soft clipping. Some very small EQing going on there. And then I'm doing some filtering with this EQ8. So I'm actually just creating some filters with the entire bus. So I'll solo this and you can hear this filter working. And I did that just to help get into that build-up a bit smoother. So you hear how the drums nicely fade out and then all of a sudden build back in. And then for the second verse, it's really similar to the first verse.
But I'm trapped inside this waterfall, and my head can't swim upstream. Yeah, when you're here, I can't.
So just using some of those top loops, the claps again, and lowering the level, automating the level, and then using just one of the kick layers. So when you are creating different sections of your tracks, just be sure to use automation like gain automation or automating like a high cut filter, low cut filter, because that'll really help out. So I just use the same clap here. Instead of using a different clap that sounded different and putting on a new track, I just automated the level, and then this clap for the drop ended up working for the second verse. So I believe that's going to be everything for the drums, the bass, instruments, effects, and vocals. I have all my references up here. I usually put some reference tracks up at the top. So I've got John Legend, just like Meduza tracks. That was a Meduza remix. And then, here's another one, Discopolis. And finally, let's just check out the masters. So I did this thing where I put in a utility plugin and then automated the gain. So what I do is I'll bounce out my whole track. And if the level of my verses or your breaks are about the same as your drop, then you need to make them sound a bit quieter. So there is more impact when you actually get into the drop. And I did this automation on the utility because I wanted to just have the verses or the breaks a bit more quieter, and it's only 1 dB difference, but it makes a huge difference when you actually balance out the whole track. So I'm just doing some automation. You can see 1 dB, -1 dB for the verses and the build-ups, put it back to 0 dB for the drop, and then bring it back down again for the second verse and second build-up. So I've got that solid bus compressor again, unlinked the left and right. Got the K-clip for that soft clipping. Have the exciter using the general presence preset. Some Pro Q3, and I just brick-walled the low end and top end. Some mastering engineers say to do that. I don't know if it always makes a difference. So sometimes I do it, sometimes I don't do it, where I brick wall and cut off the low end and top end. And then I've got the Imager plugin from Ozone and the Pro L2. Turn on oversampling when you are bouncing it down. If it's too CPU intensive when you're working on the track, you know, always turn it off. But when you're bouncing out your master, turn on to at least 4x and using the EDM aggressive and tight preset. And that basically does it for the track. Now, if you do want to grab the acapella to the song, I'll put the link down below so you can take the acapella and use it for personal use if you want to create a remix, or if you want to use this acapella to help you build out your own track and then eventually replace it later when you want to release your track. So hopefully this will help you get some ideas on how to make a selected style deep house track. If you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and give it a like, and also please subscribe to my channel if you are not yet subscribed. And finally, if you would like to check out any of my Serum preset packs, I'll put links down below for those as well. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.